Now, what's been given to us as figure 4.4 is a cartoon between John and Joanne. Okay, so Joanne asked, John, you're not from here. No, he says, no, I'm from the country. So when he means country, it means he's from the rural area. Okay, so now John basically explains to him, my dad owned a farm, but some of it dried up. Okay, I want to focus on that dried up. And my brother took the rest. So that's quite interesting as there. I'm going to point that up. So immediately we're talking about drought. So then Joanne asks, so why did you come to the city? And he basically says, John answers, for a higher standard of living. Okay. Now, once again, what are we focusing on over here, grade 12s? We're focusing on pull and push factors. Okay, vitally important. Do not get confused between the two of them. They're basically very similar. Okay. Rural-urban migration is when people move away from the rural areas for a better standard of living in urban areas. Okay. Now, I just quickly want to tabulate the difference between the pull and push factors because they're quite important to me. Okay, we got our pull and push. So what pulls the people towards the urban areas? Why do people want to go and live in the urban areas? And the push factors, why don't people want to go and live in the rural areas? What makes them want to move? Okay, there's a difference between the two of them. And we're just quickly going to tabulate them. First of all, better services. And when I talk about housing, clinics, infrastructure, okay, better employment opportunities. Tertiary education. We don't find universities and colleges in rural settlements, do we? No. So many people leave the rural areas for education opportunities, for tertiary education, like universities. Okay. And we can also mention the bright lights. Bright lights is entertainment, because there's not much to do in rural areas. Now, what pushes people away from the rural areas? Now, John mentioned this in the cartoon, natural disasters. So they experience a drought. They might experience floods. Okay. Another massive push factor is unemployment. John also mentioned that. He mentioned it because he mentioned that his brother took the rest of the harvest, so there was nothing left for him. So it means he can't earn money. He can't make money. So first of all, a drought caused only half of the production of crops. And unfortunately, his brother took everything. So it means he's going to be unemployed. Okay, massive problem. So unemployment pushes people away. A massive concern in South Africa, we've seen it over the news, is crime, like farm murders. Okay. And push factors, like we've mentioned over here, poor service delivery. For instance, like housing, water and electricity. Okay, so that you can see. So there's a big difference between the pull and push factors. Be very careful when this question is being asked. Okay, so let's just quickly have a look at the questions. If you look at question 4.4.1, name the push factor in the cartoon that caused rural-urban migration. Now we've mentioned it. Drought, and we can say, oops, oh, let me just clean this up. Drought and unemployment. Okay. Now he mentioned 4.4.2, name the pull factor that attracted John to the city. A higher standard of living. Okay. And I will go back to our table on the bottom in a couple of seconds. Higher standard of living. And when we talk about the higher standard of living, it's the following. It's services, better services. I mean, we're talking about, like, for instance, decent roads, okay, electricity supply, okay, clean water supply, sewage, tar road surfaces, clinics, good government schools. Okay, that's all services. That's a better standard of living. Okay. That's why people move. They tend to get better education opportunities. You might find in rural settlements, you only find primary schools, okay? Or the education is extremely poor, right? Not very good. Maybe no electricity available, okay? People still need to go and fetch water from a water resource. There's one tap in a community of 20, okay? There's clinics that can support the people in that rural settlements. So that's the standard of living he's discussing over here. Better service delivery. And that can be clinics, it can be roads, it can be railway, it can be electricity, it can be sewage, or it can be water. That's the standard of living he's referring to. Okay. Now, refer to the cartoon, especially in frame 4. Why was Joanne so surprised by John's attraction to the city? Okay, so as you can see, he's quite surprised. But pay attention, now I've actually missed it. Now, both of these gentlemen are sitting in the city, am I correct? Because John has moved to the city, so they're sitting in an urban area. But look at the conditions they're living in. Pay attention. It looks like a shack. Now, for all of a sudden, for a higher standard of living. So the question states, refer to cartoon frame 4. It's this one over here. Why was Joanne so surprised by John's attraction to the city? Because as you can see, that's basically informal settlement he's sitting in. It's not like proper infrastructure. So Joanne was surprised for John to move all the way from rural areas where he's experiencing extremely bad service delivery, not proper housing, poor electricity, water, sanitation, all of that. And then he moves all the way to the city area, and look at him, sitting in a shack. Okay, sitting in an informal settlement that lacks basic needs and services, such as clean drinking water, proper housing, sewage, and decent infrastructure. And that's the reason Joanne was so surprised. Okay, so I can't write it, I'm just not going to write it out, but let's say, why was Joanne surprised? Because the standard of living is already not high in the city areas. Okay, I'm just going to write there, standard of living also low in the urban areas. Okay. State 2 other expectations John had that were not met when he moved to the city. Okay. First of all, let me just clean it out. As you can see, I just want to clean this. 2 expectations. Right? Definitely that wasn't met. I'm just going to write it on our cartoon. First of all, is sitting, so definitely employment. Sitting without a job. And we can call it housing. Unfortunately. Okay. Now, if we look at question 4.4.5, the local government, municipalities must increase their yearly budgets to provide for an influx of rural migrants. Explain the statement in a paragraph of approximately 8 lines. Now, I want to focus what does budget means and why must they increase it. Okay. Now, the simple reason is every single year we have a budget. So that budget needs to be increased. It's the amount of money that needs to increase to allocate the movement of people from the rural areas to the urban areas. It needs to increase because there's such a massive influx, okay? So many people are moving year after year to our urban areas, okay? So we got this rural-urban movement, okay, migration taking place. Now, unfortunately, there's going to be consequences for our urban areas. First of all, crime is going to increase. Okay. Unemployment is going to increase because there's not going to be enough jobs for everyone. There's going to be lack of housing. Okay? Because where is everyone's going to stay? Now, when there's a lack of housing, what happens? Our informal settlements gets bigger, usually on the outskirts. So a lack of housing leads to growth of informal settlements. It leads to overcrowding. Too many people living in certain areas. Okay, so for instance, if you look at the housing plans, you've got a 2-bedroom flat, but it ends up with almost 6 to 7 people living in that 2-bedroom flat. Okay, and when this happens, it puts pressure on the municipalities. It's going to put pressure on water supply, electric supply, and most importantly, municipal services. And when I talk about, I'm talking about sewage, garbage collection, okay. So with a massive influx of people moving towards urban areas, you can imagine cities, and it leads to urban sprawl. That's a very important point. I just want to write down there. Sorry. Urban sprawl. It means urbanization, urban expansion is taking place. So our urban areas are getting bigger and bigger and bigger, but it's taking place unplanned. Okay, so we're going to experience higher demand for electricity. We're going to experience a higher demand for municipal services, such as sewage, such as cleaning the streets. Okay. So unfortunately, the city can't carry the capacity of all the people moving there. It leads to crime because many people are going to be unemployed. Okay, it leads to overcrowding. That's not a good thing. So it's a massive problem, this movement from rural to urban areas. Okay, so I must just as well mention to you, we need to be counterproductive. What do we need to do? We need to keep people in rural areas. Not because we want to, but it's just going to be better for the urban areas. We need to make our rural areas more attractive. So many towns create what? Festivities, like Clarence, okay? Have concerts, okay? We need to maybe decentralize businesses. That's not a bad idea, okay? Move businesses away from the urban areas to the rural areas. And most importantly, our government needs to improve service delivery in our rural areas. Better schools, better infrastructure, a great supply of electricity and water. Okay.